Welcome into the room. You're free to just be you. Tell me your story, and we will go exploring. Let's explore together. Let's explore together.
Hello and welcome back to Sac In The City. I'm your host, Teresa Marie. Today we are joined by T.L. Miller. He is talking about Haitian Voodoo. Let's do it. So, Haitian Voodoo, last segment we talked a lot about how you found it, other knowledge of your religion and your studies and all of that, and the occult. So, flash forward. I know we dove a little bit into it. You had a friend that brought it up to you.
Yeah.
You studied a little bit about. How did you find out that this was a good fit for you?
Good question. Well, so I have to say before again, I just want to preface this section of the conversation with that I'm not an initiate. I'm not a hungan. I'm just a passionate servant and a student, who is learning, and that's where I'm at. But so interesting. In 2006, so this was 12 years ago now, I had the honor and the pleasure to go through my Kundalini yoga teacher training with Dr. Siri Gansin Khalsa, who is a master of Kundalini yoga. And his first initiation, I promise this connects, his first initiation wasn't in Kundalini yoga, it was in Vudu, but in West Africa, in Benin. So he was initiated into this tradition.
Wow.
And that was my first introduction to Voodoo, was this amazing man who wore all white, big beard,
Wait, I'm sorry, how did you meet him?
Dr. Siri Gansin Khalsa. Well, I was involved in the occult and what have you, and so through my good friend Christian, who's a musician, and I met through another musician friend, I was like, hey, I want to get into yoga, but I don't want to do this soccer mom shit. Like, I want to do some yoga, like from India, and he's like, I got you. And then he introduced me to Siri, and I went to his class, and I did Kundalini.
I know Siri.
I did Kundalini, right? I did Kundalini yoga, and I felt this electric buzz in my mouth. Like, it felt like I had just, deep-throated a battery,
What's Kundalini? I think
Not too far. Kundalini yoga is a tradition of yoga that emerged from northwest region of India, which is now known as the Punjab region.
Oh, okay.
And then this particular style or tradition that I was practicing had been married with Sikh Dharma, so it had a lot of Sikhism in it.
Oh.
But to kind of get back to Voodoo, he was talking about I went through these initiations and would tell these crazy stories, while we're laying down in between exercises, kind of meditating. He would, go talk about these miracles that he had witnessed or, just crazy stuff. And I was always like, wait, I thought Voodoo was that bad thing with the dolls and the things and the zombies and what have you. And he's like, no, that's some white people shit. That's some white people shit, and it's typical of Western whites to demonize anything that's not white, and Voodoo's no exception. So it was particularly demonized, in the 50s when we had occupied Haiti, and so our soldiers were over there, and that's where the word zombie comes from, which is actually transliterated as...
Wait, really?
Yeah. It's transliterated it's generally spelled Nzambi, zombie. And that was... that was something that was like a punishment. So let's say you rape someone's daughter in the village, they don't hang you or put you to death. They make you a zombie. And so what they would do is create this concoction from, taking poisons from the pufferfish, a specific frog, other fauna and flora, mix them up with the ground up bones of an infant, that was dead, that you would dig up in a cemetery.
I hope it's dead.
Yeah, right. And then treat you with this, bury you in a coffin, And you would kind of go into a state of torpor, where your breathing would become as such that you wouldn't necessarily need a lot of oxygen. That's where the pufferfish comes into play. Your heart rate would dramatically slow down, and then you'd be dug up and basically be like a slave to that village, where that was your punishment. Was like if you killed somebody, or taking a life is like unacceptable in Vodou, although it's done by certain different factions and what have you. It's like it's like the last resort. Like if you're like being enslaved, and you need to kill your slavers,
Right.
then it's cool, but not like over dispute over like a goat,
Right.
a heated dispute over an ex, and you kill somebody, so then you would be made into zombie.
Well, and that is kind of the Hollywood spin on it, is that I'm sitting here today with somebody who practices voodoo. If I don't handle this correctly, if I'm not polite enough, you will shrink my head, correct?
Well, I mean, that's definitely
Like, I'm done.
that's definitely how
Like, this is it.
that's definitely how the
folks.
tradition has been demonized, and it's really not that way. And I certainly don't have the power or the knowledge to do anything that cool. But
Please, I need my head.
I could use a little head shrinking
Ooh,
on a couple levels.
that was deep. Yeah, that was deep. I liked it.
But so I get introduced to it, by my friend, and I didn't really know where to start. So I just started watching a few documentaries on YouTube. I didn't know anybody but her, and it just clicked, and I learned instantly that when you approach voodoo, the first thing that you do is you start working with the saint or the spirit or the Loa Papa Legba. And he is the gatekeeper, the guardian of the crossroads. He is the spirit that you must first call to then call of the other subsequent Loa or spirits. And so I started working with him first, and then found that next the next step is generally to work with your ancestors and with the spirits of the dead, or the Gede, or that nation of spirits. And so I started working with the dead, and actually I got into working with the dead because I'd been doing my new show Tropicana, which is every Wednesday at Badlands, no cover, check it out.
Wednesdays, downtown Sacramento.
Fun party.
Tropicana.
It's at a gay club, and so it's like very interesting mix of folks. And I was talking to my friend, and I was like, "Hey, what's the party Loa? Like who's the party god in voodoo, if you will?" And later learned to find out there really are no gods in voodoo. There's saints and spirits. And so she's like, "Well, the Gede, or the spirits of the dead, they love to drink, they love to imbibe, they love sex, kind of all that kind
What
of
about
energy."
Saint Nicholas?
That's a saint in the Catholic diaspora, but that Saint Nicholas is
You
definitely
said saints, so I went for it.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely, and so that brings me to another point. Like, why are there saints in voodoo?
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
Why are there saints in Santeria? Why are there saints? Because when the slavers brought over the Africans, especially the Africans predominantly from Benin, from West Africa, from the Congo, we were not allowed to practice their indigenous religion. They were allowed to, these are people being brought over by the French, by the Spaniards, so they're obviously Catholic. They're like, hey, but it's cool, you can be Catholic. You can be as Catholic as you want. Go nuts.
Okay.
And so what they do is be like, okay, St. Lazarus is kind of like Papa Legba because he walks with a cane. And he's a patron saint of cripples, or it's not an appropriate word, but that's what, this is the terminology.
Sure.
Or St. Peter, he's got the keys. Papa Legba got the keys too. He opens the doors. He's the one that calls you the spirits. Okay.
So they drew parallels there.
Exactly. And
Now-
through the process and through the practice of Vodou for so many years, there was this rare thing that happened on the spiritual plane, where these spirits came together, in a way that I think was just unprecedented in religion and different than like what the Romans did with the Greeks, because the Romans just appropriated everything and rebranded it. So that's different. This was a marriage of tradition, of culture, and I believe that there was a peace that was made between the Catholic saints and the African Orisha.
Sounds
And then there was
beautiful.
these new these new spirits born of it, like Papa Legba, like Azerli Danto, that kind of take bits from Catholicism
So
and from...
you had said before that, it was a marriage, it was these two worlds coming together.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I know that, the voodoo belief, if you will, has a lot of offshoots, just like Catholicism or Judaism or, Muslim,
Well, I mean, you have
Islam, whatever.
You have cults you have cults in the mountains of Haiti that are doing like horrific shit. You know what I mean?
So-
but that's not the
But modern day voodoo does believe in the saints. Is that correct? In general.
I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, definitely.
Many do.
And and again, like I was kind of saying earlier before we were rolling, typical white guy to be like, I practice voodoo. Like, no, that's kind of like the rude thing to say. That's the gauche thing to say. It's not typical of real voodoo saints. They would never say that. Like, it's generally relatively secret and not really out in the open because there is a certain level of persecution to it.
Sure.
Sure. And so there's that. So often some would say, and this is what Mamba would, we were talking about it on a thread on social media, and she was like, well, a lot of people that actually practice voodoo, like in Haiti, they're not like, I do voodoo, they're like, I'm a Catholic.
Right.
And they really kind of, many see it that way, as being like, well, I mean, it's because again, it's just a marriage of religion and of culture that is just unprecedented. I don't know of anything else that's anything like it. And for me, it was a weird...
It sounds like it. And
it's a trip.
And I think that a lot of people viewing, like, first of all, especially the Catholics viewing, automatically you're going to be like, this is a pagan religion. Here's what's interesting. So the Christians...
Catholic is probably more pagan. Like...
Well, I was just going to say, so Christians always accuse Catholics of worshiping false idols. And the Catholics will turn around and accuse the voodoo guy of the exact same...
Yeah.
Right? And
more or less,
being pagan. But it might come as kind of a surprise to the Christians and the Catholics out there, more the Catholics, that you worship a lot of the same entities, we could say, as they do.
Yeah, and I think
in regards to saints.
Well, and I think the difference, and this is a key word is serve. That is kind of one of the main differences between... Like say, and Catholicism too. I don't know that so much the Catholics, they're not supposed to necessarily worship Mary, or worship the saints. They are intermediaries, go-betweens between you and God. Same with the priest. Is that we don't worship these figures. They are helpers. They're like buddies. They're like spirit guides on the other side. They're like, you know what? I was once where you were, but now I'm where God is, ish. I'm kind of in this in-between place. And so I know how to communicate with you, but I also know how to communicate with this thing that, is far beyond your ability to anthropomorphize it. It is far beyond
Pretty much how I've understood it is that the saints are best friends of God.
Yeah, they're like homies. They're like little homies.
So it's just like, I can't go directly to God, but I know, Saint Michael, he's got my back on this, so I'm going to go to him, and then he's going to go to his homie God. And
it's like you can't like necessarily go talk to the president, but you can maybe talk to the press secretary.
So with that, do you, or in voodoo for yourself, but also general voodoo that you practice,
excuse me,
do they believe in a higher power God or many gods or one that's kind of both? I mean,
as I understand it, there is, at least the way that I've been taught, and what connects with me is that there is a all creator figure. Mm-hmm. There is like a God. There is God in voodoo, and in that sense, it's kind of monotheistic, because the Orisha or the Loa or the saints or what have you, that's just what they are. And that's something Mambo just reminded me the other day. I was talking to her, and she was like, I think that you're treating the Loa like gods. This isn't we both come from a similar background in Thelema, studying Crowley, coming from like a Golden Dawn, sort of like paramasonic background, working with the Egyptian gods. And so you have like the Egyptian, pantheon, for instance, and you're like, okay, well, I want to learn more, so I'm going to invoke the god Thoth, who is the messenger of the gods, like the god of like the initiatory priesthood, if you will, of learning, studiousness. I'm going to work with that god. Or I'm trying to get laid. I'm going to call Isis, or what have you.
Really though?
What do you mean?
You like call upon their energy to get laid?
Sure. I mean, why not? I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to get laid and finding a good partner and a good suitable partner. And there are spirits out there that'll help you do it.
Okay, so I agree. I think the part that made me laugh is that often we are very quick to sexualize prayer or positive energy towards getting laid. So I think that's the humorous part for me is that I'm
it's super popular, and
help me find my car keys. I need a new job.
Yeah, it's always
also,
this is what it always comes down to: money,
I'd like some deep digging,
money, health, sex. That's it. Like, and money, health, sex, and then you have the few and far between want a little enlightenment, maybe some knowledge.
I think most people want that.
Sure, I mean, they like to say that they do, because it makes them feel less guilty for asking to get laid, but and maybe I'm just projecting here, but I certainly have a pursuit of higher knowledge. I certainly have a pursuit of the light, of being illuminated, of being enlightened. But at the same time, I want to get laid. Like I want to, I want that to happen. I want to have money. I want to be able to travel. And there are spirits and there are traditions that there's nothing wrong with doing that. And hell, maybe even sometime you got an enemy in your way who's just incessantly fucking with you, and you need to get him out of the way. There are spirits for that too. And it even says in the Bible, there's a season, and I'm paraphrasing, but there's a season for everything under the sun.
Okay, this is true.
Whether it be war.
You just brought it back to the Beatles too.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Where's the season? So here's the thing. I gotta ask, do you put spells on people? You practice voodoo. Like, do you make little dolls of people and push needles? I feel like horrible even asking.
That's a good question.
Really immature,
No,
but I
I'm glad you asked that
know what
question.
you think. I know what you think in your movies.
I'm glad you asked that question. I personally do not. I'll give you a good example, though, and I think this might answer your question. A good friend of mine had confided in me that she was raped. And that this guy who raped her had done this to a number of women in our community, in the music community,
Okay.
And was just kind of getting away with it. And it's like, and it's kind of that, like, date rapey kind of borderline rape, where it was, all rape is terrible, but it's like, that's sad because that's how, what rape culture does to our sisters and some of our brothers.
And that's how he was able to get away with
exactly.
it.
It was kind of this sort of nebulous, and then to where they're like, did I do it? Was it my fault? And it was like, no, if you didn't want it, it's fucking his fault or her fault, whoever does it.
Right.
Well, and I became so enraged, and I was like, old me, I would just go find him and just beat him up, but I was like, I'm, 35 years old. I can't do that anymore. So I, messaged my mambo, and was like, yo, this is what's happening. What do I do in this situation? And she's like, well, I'll tell you. And she broke down to me a very specific way to call upon a very specific loa or spirit to curse somebody. But see, this is what you do in this instance, is you kind of take it out of your hands. Because, hey, maybe that person is lying. Maybe, who knows? And I don't believe that to be true. But let's just say, be playing devil's advocate here, pardon the pun. Let's just say it's not a thing. That never really happened. I would have that conversation with that spirit and say, hey, this is what I've heard. If this is true, this person, man, I can't have people raping my sisters out here. I just cannot suffer a rapist to live, and So putting it in their hands, then I was given an instruction to make a very specific concoction, place it in a very specific place, and that it has, a high success rate. Now, when approaching it, I really didn't feel comfortable. Like, I didn't really feel balanced enough in my own self and my own practice to wield those powers and have those work through me. So I opted to not do something so dramatic and just pray to that specific saint, namely Azurli Danto, the matron saint of homosexuals, of transgender peoples, of pretty much the whole kind of gay, lesbian, gay, gender fluid, like that whole spectrum.
So the voodoo you practice is accepting.
Absolutely.
Of the gay community.
I mean, just of human beings. Like, it doesn't
Right.
matter what color you are, who you have sex with.
Let me ask a question, because I get exactly, I think, what you're saying as far as not going deeper and keeping it kind of PC, if you will, praying that justice is done, if you will, or just giving the energy to those gods or that saint to let them do justice.
Let them
if you
handle
will.
it. Yeah,
Exactly.
let them handle it in their infinite wisdom. Because when we
So-
start meddling with our stupid human minds and our egos, then we start to think, I'm an agent of karma. I'm the one who's bringing about the punishment. And
Right.
that's like, that's like Stanford Prison Experiment 101. Where it's just like, okay, cool, I got the keys and I have the power. You don't have the keys.
Yep.
You don't have any fucking
Yep.
power.
I have the
You are
Billy
just the conduit
Yes.
for the power, and you should use that with great reverence and great responsibility.
Exactly. So here's my question. What if you were practicing voodoo, and let's say that you are very sensitive? So let's say, there's a number of numerous stupid things that I could mention, but let's say, for instance, you're a dickhead that happens to be into voodoo, and you go out with this chick and she's not into you, so you go home and you decide that you're gonna cast whatever shit on her. All right,
Well, but see,
I'm going with it.
no, you're making okay. So this is a great thread here. So that's what I love about voodoo, is that it's not like witchcraft, where
Okay.
with witchcraft, with some elements of witchcraft and like folk magic and what have you, it's what we would call root work, where I could just be like, I'm going to get some Damiana and I'm going to go into the full moon and I'm going to, cackle and summon these sort of, these certain energies to constrain this person to be into me. That's witchcraft. If you try to do something like that with voodoo, especially with my big sisters, my big mother spirits, they'll punk you, dude. Like they will
squash.
tear you apart. Like
That's not what it's for.
no, and that's one thing that I love about practicing it is it keeps, to a degree, certainly keeps me humble, and it keeps me in check, because just when I think I'm doing a lot, I'm killing it, oh, I'm this, I'm that, then the spirits remind me, hey man, you ain't shit without all of this power behind you, and not just us, but your friends, your mom, your sister, your family, whatever. That's what makes you who you are, is this huge energy and support net.
So
the
I get
moment,
that.
you know what I'm
So
saying?
that would be irresponsible, and it would be hugely frowned upon.
You would get punked by the
Okay.
spirits. Like your life would suck.
Now, there is magic in voodoo?
Sure.
Yes or no?
I think that there's certainly it's not magic like the Westerner would
Cinderella's
characterize it.
godmother is not going to come out here with a wand.
But and I invite anybody who has a real interest, to just watch a couple documentaries. Some of them are crap, some of them are better. You'll kind of see which is which. I would recommend a great book by Mambo T. Chitatan titled simply Haitian Voodoo. She's an authority on the subject. She's an amazing person, and check out her work. And then she'll give you an idea, because she's in connection with people back in Haiti and what have you. So look to the experts.
I think that's great advice too. If you are interested in something, as far as actually following or just interested in educating yourself, Definitely go to the roots. Definitely go to the scholars, the people
Well,
that
and
can answer those questions, and ask questions.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and that's what's interesting about voodoo is that, you know, it's like, it's not like Hinduism, you know, it's not an ism, you know, it's something, it's way more mouth to ear, the tradition. So it's like you even read you know, Mamba Tan's book, and it doesn't really like spell out, you know, the rituals, the wenga, or there are spells, you know, there are certain things, which I guess you could kind of characterize as being magic-y or witchy. There's definitely that element. You know, there's, you know, the wengas or the spells, what have you. Like, she taught me a wenga with that guy, with the rapist.
What's a wenga?
Wenga's a spell, essentially.
Okay.
Essentially. I mean, that's just
Okay.
the best way I could translate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, so there are elements of that, and there, from what I understand, from what she's taught me, is that at least in her tradition, is there are two branches. One that is more like more having to do with the West African, like Orisha, like a more African practice interpretation of voodoo, and one that is more influenced by the French Freemasonic. So, yeah, and all that, you know, she covers she gets into it a bit into the book. So I would say, if you have a real interest, like, don't listen to me. I'm pretty much just a dumb, uninitiated white dude who has a extensive background in Western occultism. You know, who just happened to fall in love with voodoo.
I don't agree with them, but I can agree he is white. So, and definitely, if you're ever interested in any of this, like, do your research. You know, our guests are here, like, speaking their mind and their opinions, but they are not the face for whatever movement or belief that they may hold. Well, so that's really important.
And I also will say, and just kind of like plug myself here, you know, if you do have any specific questions, you feel free to email me at tl.miller.create. Or excuse me, tlmiller.create@gmail.com, and I do tarot readings. I'm a witch for hire, as it were, where I'm not authorized to do voodoo for other people. I would never pretend to be, but I can certainly do certain witch practices and root work to assist you, and also educate you and train you in these practices if you are so interested.
So, Tyler, you are so involved. You produce events, you're a DJ, you work on independent films. How does your beliefs work into your projects? Do you feel like there's harmony there?
Yeah, I mean, I would consider myself, you know, a creative and a mystic, and they go together, you know. And if you look at it through time immemorial, many creatives will have a mystical side. Like I said, you know, Bowie, the Beatles, you know, Tool, you know, just all these greats, you know, and you know, again, proud and honored to kind of count myself amongst the creative mystics, and it certainly feeds my creativity. It keeps me balanced, it keeps me grounded, it gives me ideas, and I feel that it's really helped me. It's helped me to stay focused, stay humble, to stay connected with people, to have an element of spirituality in our events that we do. That even if it's, sure, it's a DJ party, but when I see you, I'm going to look you in the eye, I'm going to hug you, I'm going to kiss you on the cheek, I'm going to project love and healing light and energy. And if you're a salty hater, well, you know, we do that too.
Oh man, that's awesome.
So yeah,
I was about to give you the last word on all of this, and I feel like you nailed it, but I'm sure you got something more to add. What's the last word? You came on the show, you practice voodoo, you're this white dude in Sacramento. Anything else you want to add?
You know, I would say that now we are in an era of, I'd say now that we're in an era of where atheism is cool, and hey, if that's your bag, that's cool. But I see a lot of people are really depressed, and a lot of people are really lost. And what I would say to the people watching this is find God, whatever that is for you. If it's a tree, if it's, you know, like kind of like the alcoholics talk about, you know, the recovered ones at least, or recovering, you know, find something that is bigger than yourself, that is bigger than your ego. If it's the universe, if whatever, you know, pick something and draw from that. Humble yourself. You know, call in healing energy. and just get outside of yourself and get back to God, whatever that means to you, because we're missing it, and it's apparent. So many people are so depressed and nihilistic, and it's sad and it's disgusting, frankly. So I just invite you to explore your heart, your mind, your soul, the universe at large, and don't ever stop.
Wow.
And don't ever stop questioning.
Wow. Absolutely. Amen. I say to that, if that's okay.
Hallelujah.
I don't know. Okay. Tyler.
Pleasure.
TL, thank you so much for coming on
Hey,
the show.
thanks for having me.
It's been amazing.
Yeah,
thank
it's
you
fun.
so much for all the education.
Yeah.
Woo!